Hi, I'm Anthony from Sydney Backyard Veggies. End of January for me, my patch means starting to work on my winter garden. Although we're still pretty warm at the moment, it's going to slowly start becoming quite mild. So I am looking at starting to plant a lot of my brassica plants, my broccoli, my cauliflowers, my cabbages and the like. So I'm going to go and actually start planting out my first round of cauliflowers in the patch behind me. But before I start that, I just want to show you my seedlings and also show you the varieties of brassicas I'm going to grow this season in my garden. So January in my patch is now time to start my brassica seedlings. I like to get my planting done starting from February and planting brassicas all the way up to September, depending on the variety. So what I've got here is I've already started off both my broccoli and my cauliflower seedlings, and I started these off in at the start of January actually. The variety I plant in my patch, this variety is called Aurora. This is a warm season broccoli and I find it really produces well in Sydney and in my patch. I've been planting this variety for the last 4 years, and I'll plant in the order of about 200 to 250 heads of broccoli over the season. I will plant a new batch of seedlings every 4 weeks out in my patch. This is a good variety if you are looking at a warm season variety to plant. For cauliflower, I plant Serenity. Again, this is a large-headed, tight-curd variety, really white. Cauliflower does really well. I will plant 3 to 4 plantings. I usually plant 3, but I will be aiming to plant 4 plantings of cauliflower this year. These seedlings are now ready to go. I do like to grow them at this spot, and I'm going to go and plant them in my old corn patch, and I will show you how I go and plant. I'm going to be planting actually my cauliflowers in that spot, so I will take you through how I go about planting them in that spot and what I do to look after them. So I'm over at my south facing side of my patch, and this is where my old corn patch used to be. I've decided to plant out this first season's cauliflowers in this spot because I still get a lot of sunlight in this location. I'm pretty much getting full sun here till about early to mid-April, at which time I'll be harvesting those cauliflowers. So it's been a great spot. What I've gone and done through here is actually dug over the patch, and I made sure I got rid of all those weeds, and I got rid of the old corn plantings that were in this spot. And then after I've done that, I've actually put a full barrel load of horse manure compost that I've been composting for the last few months, and I've spread that out on the bed. Now I'm going to have to add a few amendments to this bed before I plant out my cauliflower seedlings, and the first thing I'm going to do is increase the nitrogen level in the soil by adding a good heap of chicken manure pellets, dynamic lifter as we know here in Australia. And the idea is that cauliflowers and other brassicas really do well with a lot of nitrogen, so this is going to help. But I will come through later and side dress those plants when they're planted, but this is just to get them started off for that first 4 weeks. In addition to that, I'm going to add a small handful, if you can just see that, a small handful of dolomite lime and a bit of potash. Dolomite lime's to sweeten up the compost, and the potash is also something that brassicas and cauliflower in particular respond well to. So I'm going to actually come through now, spread that out, and once that's done, then I'll be using my hoe. I'll mix that into that top soil, and I'll straighten out the bed, level out the bed, and then I'll go and plant my seedlings in trenches which I'll form, and I'll go through that now. So coming now through my bed, I'm looking at potentially 3 rows of cauliflower here, and I'm going to space those rows at 50 centimeters apart. So just taking the back of my rake, probably sitting about this far off the edge, just going to progressively, as straight as I can and as level as I can, move that soil across and continuing on. Coming across at about 50 centimeters, which is probably about there. Put my second row in. There you go. And what I might do is just put one more row in at the end, and then I'll come through and plant out those seedlings. So in planting out my seedlings, I'm spacing them at 40 centimeter spacing. So just marking that out, just giving it a little dig just to get some space in the soil. That's my seedling. Ideally, I'd like to have more soil around the root ball, but the tray is quite wet, so the soil has been falling apart. But that's no problem. Just putting it in the hole, backfilling, and don't be shy to really compress that soil. As long as the growing tip is still above the soil, it will be fine. So that's all planted. Now I'm going to continue on. Still got the 3 rows to fill in, so I'm going to continue on planting these out. So I just finished planting out those cauliflower seedlings and I ended up getting 21 in this bed, so it's quite good. I've still got plenty of seedlings to go, and I will find spots in the patch to plant them out. At the moment, I'm just going to keep an eye on them, keep them watered, and in about 4 weeks' time, I'll add my first round of side dressing to them, more nitrogen fertilizer. Expecting these to be harvested I'm aiming for them to be harvested in mid to late April. I want to clear this bed, and this is where my broad beans will be planted for this season. So I'm going to keep an eye on them, and I'll keep you posted on how they go. At this early stage, just want to make sure that I can stay on top of any bugs and pests that may get to the plants, but as it starts to cool down, those pest pressures will go away. But really happy they're in the ground. This is my first planting, and I've also planted just behind me a bit further down. I'll show you show you as well. My first round of broccoli seedlings, and I'll go show you those now as well. And then just following from the cauliflower seedlings, these were planted yesterday. These are my broccoli seedlings. I've got 18 in this patch, and using the same technique that I just showed you for the cauliflowers, I planted these ones out. Now I do have a bit of mesh on top of them, more for protection from the cat. She will use this typically as a toilet, so I'm just trying to stop her from doing that. But yeah, they've really settled in quite well. It's been 24 hours and they're looking upright and happy. So these will be harvested in 40 days. So late March is the expectation that I'll clear this out, and I'll get my first of this season's broad beans in this spot also. So coming across from my cucumbers, I'm over at my latest planting of corn. This is my corn patch that I planted about a month ago, and they're actually doing quite well. I've had to actually plant these out twice. The first round only about 60% germinated, and so I had to replant it. So I've got a few plants here at different stages. At a point where I've been away from the garden for about a week, and during that time the weeds have absolutely exploded. So I'm going to come through and do a big weeding session here. I've got a few seedlings that I've actually grown from seeds at the same time as I planted out my second round of seeds in this patch. So I'm going to plant out those spots that are still empty. And behind me there, the tomatoes, I'm actually going to look at removing those tomato plants and adding another 2 rows of corn seedlings over there, so I can have a total of 6 rows of corn in this patch. So, but before I get started, I might show you what my corn patch looks like at the moment and go from there. So just a recap of my corn patch. This was planted about 4 weeks ago. I've got 4 rows of 9 seedlings around here. Now I planted these twice because the first time I planted them, I got some relatively poor germination, only about half of them germinated. So I planted another round of seeds, and the weeds have taken over, and I need to come through and clean all these weeds and actually start supporting. As you can see, they're starting to get knocked around a bit. But I'm also looking, I'll bring you closer, there is a little bit of insect damage. You can just see it right there. It's a caterpillar that's eating away, so I need to give these a bit of a spray. But on top of that, tomatoes, these are done. They are, you know, as you can see, they're all covered with fruit fly damage. You can just see there, fruit flies just stinging there at the moment. There you go. So I need to clear this whole bed out, and I'm going to add another 2 rows just in this spot here. So I'm going to come through with my wire weeder, come through, pull out all the weeds between the rows, and then hand weed all the weeds within the row so I don't damage the baby corn. So we'll come through that, do that now. So just to show you how my wire weeder works, it's just essentially a wire just around the post, and running it across the line, it knocks out a lot of these smaller weeds that you get. The earlier you do it, the better. It's easier to knock out smaller weeds than more established ones. And I just run it through the row, and it knocks out a lot of those thread weeds and really makes it just easier to work your patch. So I've just finished weeding that patch, and those plants can definitely breathe a lot better, and you can actually see the crop now. Now there are still a few gaps in these beds, especially in the first row and in the second row, but I'm going to come through, and I've got a few seedlings which I'm going to plant in these spots. So I'm going to come through and fill in those holes, those gaps in the patch, and plant out additional seedlings in those. So I've just finished off planting out the spaces in this patch, and now I've got 36 plants in total across the 4 rows. But what I'm going to do now is actually I'll take you over the old tomato patch that I had over here. I've gone now and removed all the tomatoes in this spot, and I've added all my amendments here. And what I've done is I've dug it over, and I've added a barrel load of horse manure compost in this space. And then I've gone and added some chicken manure pellets to increase the nitrogen in the soil, and I've added a bit of dolomite lime and a little potash as well. So I've dug that all into the top layer of the bed. Then I'm going to go through now and plant out my final 2 rows of corn. I'm looking at spacing them in about 70 centimeters apart, and I'm going to plant the seedlings at 30 centimeters spacing. So I'm going to come through now and with the back of my rake form up those 2 rows. Using the same technique that I used before, I'm going to use the back of my trowel to dibble a hole with my seedling. Just going to drop it straight into that hole, and then fill up the soil behind it and compress the soil, and that's it. Now that will get watered in, and I'll continue doing it at 30 centimeter spacings, trying to get 9 seedlings per row, and I'll continue planting them out. So I just finished planting those out, and I got 2 extra rows of corn now. I'm going to come through and give these a water now just to get them settled in, and this time next week I will fertilize the whole patch, and I will heal the soil. For this stage I've been seeing a bit of insect damage on these plants. I'm going to give them a bit of a spray of pyrethrum just to make sure the caterpillars are held at bay. But then generally from now till next week, before I fertilize, I'll just make sure they're well watered daily. And yeah, just a bit of, just keeping an eye on them, make sure they're not being attacked by slugs or by caterpillars. So expecting these to be harvested by mid-March, at which point I'll be able to come through now then and plant out my brassicas in this spot. This is a really good spot to plant my cabbages and my cauliflowers in. So really looking forward to doing that. Yeah, but I'm really happy that this is my last planting of corn, and I'm really happy to have got this in now. Any later than this, I would be worried about trying to get a viable crop out of them. So if you are planting corn in Sydney now, make sure you put in seedlings in, and make sure you're doing it now. Any later, it'll be too late. Thanks a lot everyone for joining me in this video. I really appreciate all the support, and I hope you enjoyed watching me working in my patch, and I hope to see you in the next one.